Hello, good afternoon. We are home from our trip. It's so nice to get away. They did not have this kind of bug there. But it's so nice to be home too. You know how it is, it's like, kind of puts things in perspective, leaving home. But we didn't end up doing the festival for long. We did it a little bit. We ended up mostly staying at the hotel because we had driven up. I was tired, of course. The switch in the bedrooms, like, I've not adjusted to the being on a different floor in the house, and the sounds are different, and the cat situation is different. Like, I had a lot of peace when I was upstairs before in the old bedroom, and peace and quiet. And now there is a lot of, like, cats running around the house chasing each other at night chaos that will keep you awake. And just things like that where I'm just like, I'm not used to this sleeping on the main floor yet. So we have to figure out that situation. But anyway, so I was tired when we went. Oh, and then my son waking up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. to go to work, still will wake me up because again, I'm not used to that. Those are new sounds. My body doesn't learn to sleep through that yet. So I think on the night we went out of town, I had been up since like 3 in the morning. But we drove up, stopped at a couple beaches, and then stopped at the festival. And just we're kind of killing time because we couldn't check into the hotel until 4. And then finally early we tried to check in. We went at 3:30 and checked in. And then we didn't want to leave. So we, instead of going back to the festival, we just stayed in the hotel, and I had like a whirlpool bath or jacuzzi or whatever that thing is. And then they didn't have room service, but we ordered Uber Eats. And so we got food to the hotel. We had Chinese food and just relaxed. And then I couldn't sleep last night because unfortunately our hotel was right by the beach, and so I did not realize how, like, the loud, like, party, drunken bar Labor Day weekend atmosphere would be able to be heard inside my hotel room. We were, I think, on the 3rd floor, so pretty low down, but and you could just hear, like, through the window. I was on the street side, and you could hear there was so much noise until 3 a.m. So as tired as I was that night, I also wasn't sleeping last night. But then finally, around 3 is when the noise settled down, and I was able to get like 5-6 hours of sleep. But I used my Hallow app a lot because my body is so trained to fall asleep to the Hallow app. How it just reads the Bible to you and then it shuts off, which is nice, versus like if you listen on other streaming sources, it's like maybe there'll be an advertisement, or maybe it won't shut off, or it'll play a different video and you end up waking up because of it. Versus the Hallow app, it will play for whatever you pick, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever it is. It's reading you the Bible, telling you a story, knocking you out. It's meant to put you to sleep. And then it stops. So I used that repeatedly, but then it wasn't quite cutting it because for whatever reason the booming laughter of the drunk men would still pop through that sound of the Hallow app and wake me up. And so then I started listening to my music. I have worship music playlists, and one of the playlists has about 5 songs on it. It's intended for sleeping. Like, it's the most like mellow, peaceful songs. And that worked really well. I just turned on my playlist, and I turned it on loud. I was like, I am gonna blare this worship music in this room because I need to sleep, and it needs to drown out the sound of the bar outside and these loud drunk men. And that worked, and then I didn't wake up again. So that was last night, and then we just had breakfast and came home, and then I napped when we got home. Probably over 2 hours. And I had to wear we have noise canceling headphones because I was just settling down to nap, and then there were like squirrels on the roof, or just, it was like, by then it's like I had enough noise. Like I just needed like a silent room, you know? And I'm like, I can't sleep, because it was just, my body's so alert, and you have to be very alert driving for hours on end, you know? And my body was just so alert. I'm like, I cannot be hearing every noise that exists. I need to be able to have some peace. And so I asked my daughter to get me the noise canceling headphones, which are just really like $20 yellow headphones for construction work from Home Depot or Menards or somewhere. But they work amazingly well, so I wore those to sleep during my nap. And then woke up, and now I'll do my little video, and then still have to unpack the car and make another attempt at fixing that sink. I could always replace the whole entire faucet, but I don't know if it's a one pokey up thing or 2 pokey up things. So I don't know which kind of replacement faucet to buy. So it's like, I don't want to deal with that unless we have to. But I'm pretty confident I can fix it the second time, because I did fix it the first time. It's just, I think something's loose. So that's it. Today I was going to read a little bit of this book, Holy Hot Mess by Mary Catherine Backstrom. Strangely, I found her on Facebook. We were both in some sort of a group or chat or something, interacting with the same human being. And I'm off Facebook a lot more lately than I used to be, but at the time we were both commenting on the same person's thing, kind of saying very similar things to this one person. And like, she was much more articulate, and of course she worded her point better. But she liked my comment, and then she had her own, and I thought hers was just amazing. I'm like, who is this woman? So I checked out her profile, and although she's a regular person, she's also an author. So she, on her page somewhere, it was public that she had written this book. And I was like, I'm gonna buy this book. Like, who is this lady? Like, I'm curious now about this book. And so every now and then I read it, or pieces of it. I don't read it usually straight through, but I'm not huge at reading. I don't just have a ton of time where I just sit down and read, mostly because of my eyes, because I can't see well with the contact situation. But every now and then, like if I have to go to the car dealer and get something replaced or whatever, just things like that, then I'll sometimes bring along her book and just read like a chapter at a time. But I like it because of the title, Holy Hot Mess. Holy hot mess. I think we are all holy hot messes, right? It's not like some people are holy and other people are the hot messes. We are all holy hot messes. I firmly believe that. So like she starts it in the introduction, she quotes the Bible verse, Philippians 1:6. For I'm confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. Isn't that true? That's so true. Like, in essence, God started working on you, God's going to finish working on you. You're God's creation, you know, and And that's where we have to be really careful not to judge each other, because in that stage of like being molded and formed, and like with pottery, right, being shaped and crushed down and rebuilt and just perfected, getting all the impurities out, and that's God doing that. God's doing that on God's timetable, in God's way, with God's wisdom, right? And we each see different snapshots of each other's version of whatever state of mess we're in, you know, and we're very quick to judge, oh, this person's not a perfectly formed piece of ceramic pottery yet, therefore they are failing. You know, it's like, no, God is molding me just like God's molding you, and this is the stage we're at today. When they're judging, they're really judging God. So I try to remember that, even for myself, because it's so easy to do. Sorry. But she talks a lot about her kids and stuff. She says, I've always hated it when people remind me that God is still working on me. They always seem to mention this fact when my life is trash can soup. And she's just funny because she talks about like how messy our lives are a lot of the time. But see, she has a lot of other Christians in her life. And so they remind her, well, God is still working on you. And she's like, I hate that. But, and yet it's true. That's funny because she's so honest about that kind of stuff. But sometimes I think people forget. I think people should remember that more often. I think more often than what I encounter is people who don't say, God's still working on you, or don't even think in their heads, God's still working on her. They just think, she's not right. She's not like us. She's not doing it the right way. She's not, she's too much of a mess. She's too messy. It's these lifetime Christians who tend to do it. They're the ones who just are like on a different journey. Became Christian at age 3 and stuff. You know, they have a different path that they're walking out than somebody else who became Christian at 43. It's a different Christian walk. And I am convinced that it's done that way for a reason, and it happens that way for a reason, and that diversity is good. And God's no idiot, right? And the type of clay that's used and the different finished product, that different pottery is very different. You might have one real strong, like sturdy, big, you know, clay vessel for holding water, and you might have a different tiny, delicate porcelain bowl or something, and they're extremely different types of clay, and the impurities or the rocks in them, you know, how fine that clay is versus how thick it is different for each type of pottery. And then the purpose, like, is this one a bowl? Is this one a pitcher, right? Is this one a plate? Is this one a big canister? Like, the purpose of it is different. Like, there's beauty in all of that. And so when you have trouble is when people are thinking or only surrounding themselves with people who are the same type of clay or the same type of pottery that they are. And then they're looking at the other like that doesn't fit in. you don't belong. When really, you take that person and you put them in the type of pottery and the type of clay, and you get them out of their element, and now they're the one who doesn't belong, right? So people have to just really keep that in mind. I always think if they're judging me, they're judging God. It's like how there's different types of Christians, right? What do you have? You've got the Catholics, Protestants, right? Methodist, I don't know what, Jehovah's Witness. What are all the different types? I don't even know. You got the Pentecostals, the Evangelicals, Lutherans. You have all these different types of people who they're like, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. And they all do it so differently. One group they'll not let you take communion if you haven't done A, B, and C. Another group will let you take communion. And yet supposedly they're all Christians. It's like, well, some really focus on, like the Catholics, they really focus on the Virgin Mary, which is interesting to me because I'm not Catholic. I don't tend to love Catholicism myself, but they would consider themselves Christian. And so then they're just all so different, and then they hang around each other, right? They go to church with the other people who are also Methodist, or they go to church with the other people who are non-denominational or whatever, and people tend to hang around with their own same clay, And so I, being so new, am like, well, where do I fit? Who am I in that? For a long time, before I would even consider myself Christian, I thought I was Baha'i. I'm like, well, maybe I'm Baha'i, because of the things that I believe, they're the most similar with Baha'i faith, which I didn't even know anything about, but I've never been to a Baha'i church ever, but per Google, it seemed like Baha'i fit me the most. And then my big church is more non-denominational, but it's really more Baptist based. It started out as a Baptist church, and then it grew. But they try to be more non-denominational. And then my little church is more, I've had a couple little churches. They're both more evangelical. And for me, it's a nice contrast between the largeness of the big church and the tininess of the evangelical churches. And then also the different styles. Like the big churches are more, somebody's doing their yard again. The big churches are a little more like, let me help you with your life. Like if you were to use the Pilgrim's Progress story, in my mind, how I visualize it, there's this part in the Pilgrim's Progress story, kids version, about it's like there's this city that's really worldly, and all these people are like, it's like a carnival. It's so yucky. And so for me, I think of the big churches as the churches that are closer to that city, not because the church themselves are worldly, but because they're trying to divert the people from that place into church. And so they've perfected that skill of, how do we bring the people who are in that state to church? And so they're dealing with issues in a different kind of way than somebody who's been going to church for 50 years already, And so there's a lot of like help with addiction, help with divorce recovery, help with, I don't want to say self-help, but there is a lot of like let's use the Bible and talk about life in a way where these people's lives actually get healed and they benefit and they can recover, because it's one thing to become a Christian if you've never been a heroin addict, but it's another thing to become a Christian if you are in full-blown addiction. And you work with those people differently, and the smart churches get that. They don't expect you to come in a perfectly formed piece of ceramic pottery. They know that they're sometimes dealing with mud, and they're working with that, and then they do remarkable things. And in my mind, that's why they're big. That's why they grow, because there's a lot of people in that state. There's a lot of people who need that help, and God is using God's churches to reach as many different types of people as possible. What was my point about all of this? And then the little churches tend to be, like, especially the evangelical ones, they tend to not bring in those types of people. They tend to not bring in the clay that is not formed yet people. They tend to bring in the people who just believe in God, and they've believed in God for a long time, and it's like their whole family is Christian, and it's like this more generational Christianity, and everyone just, then they have their potluck or whatever. It's different. It's very different. To me, it's very different. So I probably can't even describe it right, because I'm describing it from my own perspective. But then they also preach different. So then the pastor will take sections of the Bible, and you just go through it paragraph by paragraph by paragraph, like insanely slow. And yet, there's purpose in that, right? So for me, it brings a really good balance to have the two churches. But anyway, so because it reminds me of swearing, because so then today I swore. I think on these videos I might have said freeguine a couple of times. I don't even know if that's a swear word, freeguine. I think I made it up, freeguine. But back in the day, like I think partly the city I grew up in, and everything. I don't know what it was, but I swore so much. I had such a bad potty mouth. Like I swore more than any of my friends. I swore more than most people. Like I swore all of them. I don't even know what would be my motivation. Like it wasn't like I was trying to swear a lot. I just did. I swore constantly. Every swear word that there is, I would swear, and just in random, normal, everyday conversation. And it became an issue for my kids, because they would go to school and they know that you're not supposed to swear, right? And then their mom had a really bad potty mouth, and it was like, and then we had a swear jar, and that is something that has changed though, because there's so much had changed when I was becoming a Christian the first few years. So much was changing so fast, and it felt like so intense that there were times I would just pray and I would thank God. I'd be like, thank you, God, that I can still swear. It makes me feel normal, because so many other things were changing, and it felt like out of my control, because I wasn't trying to change those things. They were just changing, and then it was so much. So I would thank God, thank you, I can still swear. Thank you, God, that I can still swear. I wasn't going to intentionally make any effort to stop swearing. And I didn't really think God cared. I was like, they always say like, oh, don't use the Lord's name in vain, and oh, don't do this or that, and don't swear. And I was like, God doesn't care. That's what I thought. I was like, God does not care. Who cares, right? Who gives a shit? Whatever. I was like, but I remember I would constantly pray and thank God. Thank you for letting me. And then there was a day when I was talking to my daughter in the kitchen. She was over at the table, and I was like standing up by the counter, and I was telling her a story. We were talking about something, and then it was supposed to have been swear words coming out of my mouth, about whatever it is that I was talking about. But it wasn't like I was mad or anything. I was just like describing something to her. And instead, all of these other super clean words were coming out of my mouth. It didn't even sound like me. And then she says to me, it's not because it sounded so different. She says to me, "What was that?" Not because it was like all this swearing, but because it was the opposite. It was so clean. "What was that?" she says. I'm like, I don't know. Because I was like, what just happened there? I have no idea either. And then I went on with telling my story, and then it happened again. All this, hold on. I think we have a helicopter. All this super clean, series of words came out of my mouth instead of whatever swearing I was gonna say. And I wasn't trying to make it happen. It was like it wasn't even me doing it. And then it happened twice. So it was like shocking, like, what is going on here? Right? And then it made me realize over time, I was like, I think that was God. I think that was the Holy Spirit, like, letting me know it's time now for you to stop your swearing. I do actually care that you swear so bad. And it felt like a prompt from God, like, don't pray to me anymore thanking me that you can still swear. I'm making it now so you can't swear anymore. Like, I have control. I felt like a puppet. Like, literally other words were coming out of me that weren't even my words. And then since that day, because it was so stark and because it happened twice, then I did try to swear a little less. But not too hard. Like, I didn't try hard. Like, you get me mad enough, the swear words would still come out. But then I've noticed we're kind of in the stretch where it's like, I pretty much, I don't swear. I speak differently. Like, now, all of a sudden I'll be like, oh my goodness, Kira, blah, blah, blah. I've never used to talk like that. I never used to say, like, oh my goodness. It's like, where is that coming from? Who says that? You know, it's like, I've not, and that's where this thing about he who started a good work in you will finish it or whatever. There is this element to being changed. And when you're the one it's happening to, you know how much has changed, how much hasn't changed. You can gauge it because it's happening to you. You feel it, right? If you're clay and you're being molded and smashed down and crunched up and water added and pieces removed, and when you're going through that process, you can tell, you can feel the pressure and the changes. You feel it. It's not like it just happens secretly. And that's where it's hard then if somebody, like, say, even that I would say freaking on these videos, there are Christians who will watch that and be like, she says freaking, she's not a Christian. And that's how judgy they are. People are so, they don't know, they haven't seen from beginning to end. Only God knows, right? But there's things like that are just amazing when they happen. And I can't see, the sun's too bright. I should probably stop this video. It's almost a half hour. But anyway, so that's why I like this book, Holy Hot Mess. Because, yeah, we might be a hot mess. We might even look like a hot mess to other people. But we are a holy hot mess. I think we are all different versions of being holy hot messes. So I love this title of this book. So shout out to this Mary Catherine Backstrom woman. Anyway, that is all. Talk to you later. Bye.